Welcome to the TAG Awards 2020. We wanted to do this earlier, but unfortunately with the coronavirus and so on, that wasn't possible, or we didn't really think of doing it as Zoom. We just thought that really wouldn't work, but we're kind of left no choice. But let's hope it's the only one. And we'll be back to normal next time if the vaccines all work and so on. I mean, what's particularly unfortunate about the coronavirus with TAG is that it's very much a sociable organization, and so many of our things had to end as a consequence. And we also had plans to do various tours, which were put on hold, and hopefully we'll do all those next year. But as a kind of as an upside, we did embrace Zoom, and we started TAG Talks online, Zoom TAG Talks. And we've had Simon Hirst talking about all the capitals he's seen over the world, and Robert Adam discussing his new book. We also had a really interesting discussion about ornament, where we had Sandy Stoddart, among others, talking, and that is absolutely fascinating. All these talks are available on the TAG website. And we're planning future talks. We're going to have one on the Rococo, and Anne Fairfax has agreed to do one. Just keep looking at the TAG website or on social media, and they'll come up. We're also planning some visits. I'm quite keen to go to Craig Hamilton's chapel at Cullen. Also, Scion House was something that we planned to do before the lockdown. Also, I would really like to see TAG members' buildings. And if anyone has a house or church or anything they've designed, which we can get into, that would let us know, and we'd love to put that on the list. Also, TAG has decided to do some new awards. Something we're going to start this year. We feel that there aren't nearly enough awards for traditional buildings. The ROBA would never give any. So we decided we're going to give awards for the best new traditional building, and we'll divide it into categories like extensions, urban design, and country houses. It's very much the planning stage, but please do get your buildings photoed, and hopefully we can give you an award for them. Right. Okay. To start off, we've got the Measured Drawing Prize, and this we had a huge amount of interest this year, quite much more than we expected. And as classical architects, we all view it as terribly important to look at buildings of the past and learn directly from them. And there's really no better way to learn than looking at measured drawings. And for this award, the participants have to measure historic building. It's open to everyone. There's no age bracket, no, just anyone can enter. And we also insist on having evidence, first-hand evidence of measuring, rather than just sort of copying it out of a book. And so we did have quite a large amount of entries, and with some really, really excellent, excellent examples. For the highly commended, there was 3 excellent schemes. Chris Hill, who measured the Temple of Friendship at Stowe, which was, I thought, excellent, really nicely rendered, very sensitive in watercolor. And Paul Gerung, who did this almost sort of photographic pencil drawing of a terraced house in Bonington Square. And then the third highly commended scheme was a complex in India measured by students of Bhopal School of Architecture. This was quite an incredible body of work. We couldn't really give it the prize because it was done by a large group of people, but we felt we'd like to commend it because it really was extremely impressive. Third prize goes to Connor Lynch for East Front of Minster House in Winchester, Hampshire. Beautifully rendered, watercolor, accurately drawn, well, we all know Connor Lynch. Connor Lynch was the winner of the first measured drawing prize in about 2006, 17 maybe. So that was great to see him back. Second prize goes to Xing Ken To for a measured drawing of 2627 Queensgate in London. Really beautiful watercolor rendering with a lovely frame and a very attractive drawing, even including curtains, which add a certain human spirit to the whole thing. And the winner was Edward Mitchin. I'm hopeless at doing this. Hang on, I've got to stop share. Well, I'll come back to this. But Edward will win will have the prize of £500 and have our tag award, which you can see top left of this. We were all very impressed by this drawing, accurately measured. We saw all the preliminary drawings done on site. It's an interesting choice of building, probably a slightly neglected part of classical architecture, these terracotta buildings of the late 19th and early 20th century in the West End by William Henry Powell, not an architect I'd heard of, but a really interesting study and nice to see. So well done, Edward. Edward, I wonder whether you could say something. Now I'm going to have to stop share and go to Edward. Are you there? Can you say something?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Is that on you now, or am I still sharing the? Is that?
No, you're good. You're good.
Is it on Edward, or is it on? It's on you now.
Yeah, we can see everyone now. So
okay, great. Okay, Edward, just say a few words about your drawing.
Oh, can everyone hear me? I'm not on mute, am I? Am I on mute?
No,
you can hear me. Okay, I haven't got a cat filter or anything. Okay. Yes, I'll just say just very briefly, just say a couple of words. Obviously, thank you very much for the prize. It's absolutely wonderful to have even been recognised, and especially given the breadth and the quality of the work this year. It was quite incredible. In terms of the building and how I came about choosing the building itself, it was at the time that we were in the office working on a project in Grosvenor Square, as well as working on a project in North London in Hampstead. And the project in Hampstead was brick and masonry. And so I was particularly sort of engaging with this type of research, as we say, with, as Francis said, with William Henry Powell and Richard Norman Shaw and other Victorian architects. We were doing a lot of research and looking at the detailing of brick and masonry together. So I was sort of particularly aware of this type of architecture that was as I was walking through London. I was on my way to Grosvenor Square for another site visit. And I came across Mount Street, and it was just, it's such a wonderful street. And if you've not been there, I implore you to go there when you're legally allowed to, and it's safe to do so. It's really, yeah, really quite a beautiful street. Lots of the picture doesn't quite do it justice being black and white, but the beautiful sort of terracotta and brick buildings. Each one of them is unique, and they sort of represent a very sort of typical Mayfair Victorian Regency style. I mean, the Queen Anne and the Flemish style of the entire street is really quite wonderful. So yes, I implore everyone to go there. It's a lovely street.
Thank you very much, Edward. We were all really impressed. It was pretty unanimous, the decision. And you'll get one of my plaques here. Whoops, can you see that? And you can stick it on the wall like I've got mine here, but these aren't awards, they're just, so there we go. We'll send that to you, hopefully, probably not for a while, because it might well sort of crumble in the post, but eventually. Okay, thank you for that. Right, are we back on the, we're back on the screen saying measured drawing? You see that?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. Sorry, I'm so crap at this. Okay. Now we come to the student design competition, and again, incredibly high standards, as usual, actually, and really fun to judge. And I mean, it was judged by the committee, which is me, Nigel Anderson, Simon Hurst, Jan Holger, and Diana Yu. And we had a really great time having a look at these schemes and discussing them. And I suppose having a highly commended category is a way of commending people whose work was really very impressive, of almost kind of winning level, but the standard was sufficiently high that there were others who finally won it. Chris Hill, who also did the drawing of Stowe, did this really nice scheme for a house in Sussex based on an L shape in the arts and crafts style, which was sort of refreshing to see, because so many of traditional architecture goes straight for kind of high classical, and it was interesting to see another style done so accomplished in such an accomplished manner. Also commended was Manraj Bogal, who designed an urban block in robust classical style in Glasgow, very much influenced by early 20th century classicism. And also commended was Luke Alcock, who designed a concert hall and performing art academy in Worcester. Very attractive drawings, very ambitious program. In third place was Lewis Silburn, who designed an urban block in Glasgow, part of Kingston's unit in St. Vincent Street. This designed in a sort of Mannerist style with sort of flourishes of Edwardian Baroque, a certain debt to Cockerell, highly accomplished, and we were all very impressed. Second prize went to James Alexander Rennie from Cambridge University. We all really liked this design. What he did was to take the permanent parts of buildings and basically he found a part of King's Lynn which was empty, and made gable ends and chimney stacks. And the idea is that when new residents came in, they could build the houses in whatever materials and styles they liked, using the permanent parts of architecture. It was absolutely beautifully rendered, incredibly impressive. These wonderful, evocative, I imagine they're CGIs, but they look like sort of oil paintings. So yeah, we're all impressed by that. And the first place went to Anthony Fifigulo. I pronounced that completely wrong. Sorry about that. For this excellent tower, designed in Glasgow, again part of the Kingston unit, with a great debt to McKim, Mead and White, and the New York classicists. The judges were impressed by the great attention to detail and thoroughness of the design. And Anthony, sorry, I pronounced your surname wrong. I'm very embarrassed. Forgive me. Can you say, oops, I've just got to stop share. Here we go, stop share. Okay, Anthony, can you say a few words?
Yeah, no, thank you everyone for the award. It was a huge achievement to receive it. Regarding the project, I just really had fun designing it. One of the key things that I enjoyed with the project was being tutored by Tim and Jonathan, and by the end of the 2 years that I was with them in the master's program at Kingston, I was able to read buildings and not just look at them or see them. I was able to understand how a building was composed, not only from its urban context, but to the human scale. And so when our field trips in London and Glasgow and New York, I was always sort of collecting details, always sort of like measuring things or taking photographs. And when the project actually started, I was heavily influenced by the Scottish architect James Miller and his commercial buildings. And I wanted to introduce all of the things that I had captured on the field trips and then introduce them into the building itself, from the door handles, the window mullions. And yeah, I just really had fun designing it, really, and paying close attention to other things, because Glasgow's heavily got an awful lot of sculpture, so I wanted to introduce that into the building as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Anthony. That was great, and a very impressive scheme. And we'll be sending you £1,000, or maybe we have already, I don't know. And you'll be receiving one of these bas reliefs, which you can put on your wall.
Thank you.
Okay. And now we come to the TAG Awards for Education. At the last AGM, we felt we'd like to kind of reward people for what they do for classical architecture behind the scenes. And you may have noticed that a lot of these schemes come from Kingston, and they all come from the same unit, which is Timothy Smith and Jonathan Taylor's unit there. They've been running it for about a decade, and it is certainly the only traditional and classical unit in the country, perhaps in Europe. And it's great that they just plow this kind of lonely furrow. And what I particularly like is they're very adversarial about it. They're not hostile to modernism. They very much come out of a modernist background. And what they're interested in is the dialogue of classicism with modernism, and how the two can help each other, reinforce each other. And I think through this kind of more friendly approach to the styles, which is quite unusual in a way, they have gained lots of friends and respect as a consequence. So I don't know, Timothy, would you like to say a few words about your work?
Yes, thank you very much, Tag. We're very pleased to receive the award and the recognition. As you say, we've been doing it for some time, and it started, I think it was Summer Show 2011 at Kingston, and we've been teaching for 3 or 4 years. And one of our students had done a preliminary design project just for a facade before embarking on the main project. And her facade was highly inspired by Soane, and she did a beautiful 1:20 scale pencil drawing, similar to the measured drawings we saw before. And when we were setting up the final summer show, the head of school saw her putting it up on the wall and asked her what building it was, because it looked really nice. He wasn't aware of it, thinking it was a precedent study, a measured drawing of a building that already existed. And when she turned around and said, "Oh, well, no, it's my design," he was really impressed, said kind things about it in the exhibition speech, and that he was really pleased this sort of radical approach was happening. And Jonathan and I had talked about doing a sort of properly classical design studio in the preceding years. Hadn't really had the guts for it, and didn't really think they'd let us do it, or that any students would be interested, because you'll know that architectural education is dominated by the non-classical in the design studio. And we thought, well, let's do it. If that's not a sort of vote of confidence, what is? And it was popular with the students. It was thoroughly enjoyable for us. We've learnt much of our own knowledge of classical design through teaching students and the reading and the field trips and things like that have happened, and have become just more and more convinced that whatever students go on to do afterwards, it's insane that the orders and classical composition are not taught in design studios in more widely, and that there's so much value in it. So we've been at Kingston since 2008, teaching classicism since 2011. We've been teaching on the Engelsberg Summer School also, which is wonderful, with the group of students there from all over the world. And this semester we are Harrison guest critics in classical architecture at University of Miami. So lovely to, this really helps with the recognition and to give us confidence in keeping up the good work.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure. Yes. Okay. And you'll be receiving one of our base reliefs, which doesn't seem to be. Yeah, you can put it on the wall.
Do we get one each, or do we have to?
Yeah, one each. Or you can cut it in half, I guess. No, you get one each. Okay, great. Well done, Timothy and Jonathan. Jonathan, do you want to say a few words, or are you all right just being?
No. I think I'm fine, except to say thank you very much.
Right,
much appreciated.
Right. I don't know why Timothy is always the sort of spokesman, but I guess
I'm just the loudmouth. But what I forgot to do, actually, looking through the list of participants here, is to thank many of the people who are here for their input. Craig Hamilton has visited us sometimes straight from the plane from Heathrow to crit with us all day. Most of the years we've been teaching. Francis, you've been helping us. Bob has done lectures and I'm sure other things. Hugh, Petter, and who else did I see here? I'm sure I saw someone else who'd crit. George, of course. Mark Wilson Jones, yeah. So many of you have contributed, and that's been incredibly helpful and very, very enjoyable. So thank you, and we'll be calling on many more of you over the coming years.
Great. Okay, and I'll just go back to this one. And our second TAG award, also for education. Sorry, hang on. Sorry about this. There we go. Sorry, you can see that now. Goes to Mark. Hang on. It goes to Mark Wilson Jones. Mark is associate professor at Bath University, but also is a practicing architect. And I suppose what is valuable about his contribution to classical architecture is that he is both a practitioner as well as someone with a deep academic understanding of classical architecture. I think that we often are seen as these sort of people who don't really understand the proper classical architecture, and if we did, we'd be modernists. But it's always reassuring to see someone like Mark who really understands Roman architecture and decides to practice in that style. His contribution has been via some extremely erudite books, The Origin of Classical Architecture and Principles of Roman Architecture. He has written extensively about the Pantheon, as well as many other Roman buildings. And I wonder whether, Mark, you'd like to say a few words for that.
That's very kind. Can you hear me?
Yep, yep.
Good, good. Well, thank you so much to everyone. But I mean, TAG principally, but obviously I think everyone here is probably connected in some way. So so that's good. And yeah, no, it's a real honor, and it's delightful that some of this, the work writing, which can be quite, you know, heavy and detailed, and I mean, I don't particularly like this word erudite, but I just think of it as you need to put in whatever evidence and observations that are necessary really to make the case. So if it has to go with sort of 55 footnotes and, you know, some of them are long and tables and appendices and all that, so be it. And if you can make the point lightly, even better. But I suppose in terms of this, the connection also with Timothy and Jonathan, it's kind of like a different, I'm coming from a different perspective in the sense that in Bath, they don't really let me teach that much in studio because maybe, you know, we know the problem. It's the sort of, you know, the modernist orthodoxy. And instead I sort of teach history and theory and deflate a little bit some of the sort of great myths of, you know, the standard things, form follows function and all that stuff. And I think students who stay the course, they don't really believe those things so much anymore. But obviously they still, you know, it's interesting to see what comes out of their design work. But usually I think it's more something that they might benefit from in later years. So anyway, but I do love teaching studio when I get the chance. But anyway, otherwise, I'd just like to say a word of thanks to the British School at Rome, which is actually the place where, for me, all of this started, because I was in what was then Polytechnic of Central London. And one of the teachers there included Eric Parry on the one hand and Dimitri Porphyrios on the other. And so that, you know, you got some very brainy people and artistic people teaching architecture, and it was fascinating. But then the next stage of my sort of education was going out to Rome and being there for 2 years, you know, poring over the monuments and getting up the scaffolding, of which there were stacks. It was fantastic. So it's this whole thing. Obviously, it's great that you encourage the measured drawings. So I'm really behind that, because you need this combination, not just of reading and studying, but actually observing and measuring is great. So I'm all behind TAG. I think it's wonderful, and may there be many more of us.
Great, thank you very much, Mark. That's excellent. Okay, for the and you'll be getting one of our plaques, obviously, a whole one, not a half.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the final award, and I'll just stay on my screen to be honest, is Sandy Stoddart, who I'm sure everyone knows, everyone here knows, and he is winning our Lifetime Achievement Award, and extremely well deserved. I suppose the only thing that makes him unqualified is that he's still quite young. he is the Canova of our times. If you look at his work, it really is indistinguishable from the great work of the 18th and 19th century. And he has done some amazing sculptures, particularly in Edinburgh, of David Hume, Adam Smith, and William Playfair. He also has had many collaborations with members of TAG, starting with Bob Adam in the late 80s, and then going on to work with John Simpson at the Queen's Gallery at Buckingham Palace, and George Somry Smith at the Richard Green Gallery in Bond Street. And all through that, he has been working extensively with Craig Hamilton, who is a major collaborator, and they're both working together at the moment on a large job in Dallas. As well as being a very accomplished sculptor, he's also an intellectual heavyweight, and it's a pleasure talking to him. You can be talking about the frustrations of dealing with Zoom, and before you know it, you'll be talking about Plato and Aristotle. Sandy, I'm very embarrassed to be giving you this bas relief, which was done by me very quickly. Tags doesn't have much funds. If you ever felt you wanted to do a replacement, it's not a condition of your Lifetime Achievement Award, but we'd be very grateful, but seriously, no pressure. You know, if you have to hide this in a drawer and just bring it out when I come and see you, I won't be too offended. Sandy, I wonder whether you could like to say a few words.
Of course, Francis. Can you hear me if I speak like this?
Yeah, I can.
Well, it's a great honour and really very moving to be reviewed in this way by your peers. I mean, I'm only 61, and I thought I felt the death bells ringing when you phoned me up, because I'm still waiting for a big break, frankly. Nevertheless, look, the thing is that what we're seeing here in these awards is the process of young people coming forth with great ideas. I am absolutely stupefied that on more than one occasion, Glasgow has been mentioned with some of the projects that have been presented. Our friend Anthony, who cited James Miller, the great neoclassical architect that comes on in Glasgow after the Art Nouveau, the Jugendstil style, and has been overlooked as a great modern classical architect with American style strongly within it. So Miller is a great architect, and I cannot thank you enough for acknowledging the work of a young architect who is paying attention to these forgotten people. And they have been too long forgotten and overridden because they didn't fit the narrative, the triumphant narrative. Well, it's a Lifetime Achievement Award, and it makes me feel fat and reminiscent, Francis, frankly, because I'm looking back to think of the catastrophic beginning of it all. But, you know, we talked at some point about the annoying sectarian divide between modernists and classicists. And, you know, some of us who have got a bigger view would say there are modernists in classicism. You know, some people say that Canova was the first modern sculptor. I don't quite know what that is. The philosopher Adorno said that modernism started with Homer, and that goes way back. So what are we really talking about here? We're talking about the struggle to make life bearable and accommodate certain redundancies within our lives that we feel need expressed. That's why we put statues on buildings. You don't need to have them there, but if you do, it's a sacrifice. There's money involved there, time, effort, and design. And you do it in order to ameliorate the horrible effects of functionality. I mean, functionalism is what you do in an abattoir, but we are not in that abattoir. So that's what we do. We try to do polite things. So as a sculptor, I started off in Glasgow. Glasgow School of Art. And Glasgow is a city that's encrusted with statuary in a way that Edinburgh's not. It has its beauties and its brilliances, but Glasgow is the home of architectural sculpture as far as I'm concerned, particularly the great necropolis of Glasgow, the city of the dead, the great graveyard that sits above the cathedral. And their sculpture is used with high architecture to bring us beyond our quotidian lives into something that's more substantial, perhaps transcendental. So when I was in Glasgow, I saw the great sculpture schemes of these buildings when I was a student, trying to get good marks from my tutors. And yet looking at the great works on these buildings and thinking, this is what must be done again. Then I read a piece of a digest of a lecture that the great James Pittenreich McGillivray had written. He delivered to an architectural association in Glasgow. He was the third Queen's sculptor in Scotland. And he said the simple line in this speech, he said, architecture is the natural home of sculpture. And I thought to myself, this is really where it is. We don't want sculpture in white wall galleries with some snooty person at the desk with a mouth like a pussycat's bottom thinking who's in charge and where's the great reviews going to be coming from. What we want is architecture to have a happy home, which is stable and forever. And we find that in architecture. So I embrace the idea of architectural sculpture for the reason of homeliness, but secondly, because a work of sculpture that is in a building is not on the market. It will never be sold. And this is a marvel to me, that we transcend this idea that a work of art is made and then it is reified, made real by some auctioneer tapping a surface. That seems to me to be a particularly revolting effect. So I embraced architectural sculpture. It was hard to do in the old days. But I have to say that it started off with two modernist architects, a man called Duncan Adam, who was the founder partner of a company called Hutchison, Lock and Monk. And he gave me my first commission here at home when I was a wee boy. And then after that, an architect called David Page, who was a modernist architect in Glasgow, very esteemed and very accomplished. And he saw that here was something to be done. He was doing a development called the Italian Centre at the time, and they needed sculpture for the exterior of it. And he gave me that big break. It really was the big break. And I can't thank him enough for that. But I wanted to be a sculptor for classical architecture, above all classical architecture. And I approached Bob Adam, our hero, the pater familias of us all. And he was the one that wrote back to me and started my work within your sphere of endeavour. After that, great John Simpson gave me great work to do, it still does. And then a connection, as you said, with Craig Hamilton, and that's a very profound connection. And we're ongoing with various works here and there. So I can't thank everybody enough for what I've managed to do. A man is not alone, or a woman, and so one has assistants and helpers all over the place. I'm sitting here with my chief assistant, Lindsay Mcquarrie, who has been with me for several years now, doing outstanding work at the studio in Paisley. I am a hardy provincial. I believe that you live and work where you are. We don't need to go to the great metropolises to prosecute our work and our mission. We can do it from the provinces, be it Winchester or Radnorshire or wherever. And great revolutions always come from away from the metropolis. The metropolis is so often compromised by backstairs and connections. So the hardy provincials, the ones that stay away, are the ones that maybe eventually transpire. I want to thank you all for being such great friends. Conviviality, friendliness, and a knowledge that all over the world, there are people like-minded who will always give you a welcome. So thank you all, and thank TAG above all for this kind recognition.
Thank you, Sandy. That's really great to hear you, and very well deserved, and thanks for your contribution. And it is, I think, what's coming through from what you've said and what Mark said as well, is it's this way that we all help each other, because architecture is such a big endeavor. You can't do it as an individual. And through having something like TAG, people can come together and do something sort of bigger than themselves.
Okay,
Okay, I think that's it. We've gone on for nearly an hour, which is quite a long time. I hope we haven't bored you too much. And I know everyone is probably zoomed out, but I found that absolutely fascinating and really great to hear everyone's contributions. And despite some of my technical flaws, I think that was definitely worth doing. I'd just like to thank the rest of the committee, who do a lot more work than me, actually. Nigel Anderson, who is our treasurer, Simon Hurst, who really picks up everything which gets forgotten, Jan Horgler, who does the membership, and we've had so many new members as well, and they all need to be written to and treated with care. And then our latest committee member, Diana Yu, who is in charge of the events, who has been a really new and young dynamic contribution to the committee. So I'm very optimistic about what TAG will do in the coming year, and hopefully we'll see you in person at an event soon, or our next awards evening. Thank you very much.